All right, I'd like to welcome everyone to the April Zoning Board meeting. Noreen, you'd like to do roll call?
Evan Scully.
Present.
Marcy Daniel.
Present.
Chip Postiglione.
Here.
Steve Thaw.
Here.
John Seeley.
Here.
Thank you.
I'd like to point out the fire exits, two behind you, one off to either side of the dais.
In order today.
I'd like to keep it.
You do.
All right, let's, the first on the agenda is continuing public hearing for Liebowitz. How you doing? Yeah, speak
You
to the
have
mic,
talk
please.
to the mic. I didn't hear any of that.
I'm sorry, Michael Shapiro. Excuse me, just hit video mute.
Yeah, have a seat, guys.
Or static.
There's all the static.
There's a lot of static coming over.
Doesn't like you.
I'll try turning it back on. Sorry.
Hello?
So Mr. Hutton just passed up to the board a package of 4 letters signed by some of the adjoining neighbors in support of the application. If I might,
Well, before you get started, I'd like you just to give us a recap. It's been a month on where we were and just
Sure.
if anyone is here.
This is 34 Irene Court in the town of Monroe. It is an existing house, 4-bedroom. The owner would like to tear down the existing house and replace it with a new 6-bedroom home. The lot, the only problem with the lot is too small. It's less than 43,560. Both the existing and the proposed house will meet all bulk requirements within the town. It'll be served by individual septic and well.
Thank you. Go ahead.
as Mr. Hutton said, I don't believe any members of the public were here at the last meeting to address this matter. The letters that were handed up are from the 3 neighbors immediately across the street, Irene Drive, as well as the neighbor to the top, Lot 10. The 2 lots that are immediately adjacent to our parcel are both vacant lots and heavily wooded and would have no impact on this. And as Mr. Hutton says, we otherwise meet the bulk requirements for this house, except for the fact that the lot is, instead of 43,000 square feet and change, it's 41,000 square feet and change. But we meet the side yard requirements by a lot. We meet all the other bulk requirements. Even with a bigger house, the coverage of 15% requirement, I believe we're at 13%. So we're just looking for an area variance for the size of the parcel.
Thank you. Kevin and Marcy, you guys weren't here last month, sorry.
Watch the.
Yeah, how'd I look? My hair good? I try. I try. I did some push-ups before, trying to get it all going, but thanks for noticing. So, and that was the initial public hearing, right, Dave, on that?
I believe that was.
Right, and so, I don't know if you remember, but I think, Steve, you pointed out that they were within 500 feet of another town, so that had to set other things into motion, correct?
Yes.
Right. And then we noticed that there was a mistake on the application.
It said it was going to be the
Yes.
same footprint.
Same footprint.
Yes.
And we cleared that up, right?
That was 2 meetings.
Yeah,
That was
two-
two meetings
That was
ago.
two
Yeah,
meetings
that was
ago.
2 meetings
That
ago,
I
which.
remember. That I was present for.
Yeah, which gave us just a different eye to look at the project as as I drove by it, I was under the impression it was going to be the same footprint. So then when we found out that there was that mistake, I went back to look again. So just to get you
And
updated.
Yeah,
because
no,
of that,
that I
I think
remember.
we're withdrawing our request for an interpretation and just looking for the area variance.
What's that, George? Say that again?
We no longer are asking for an interpretation of the zoning code, which was on the original application. We're looking for the area variance, not the interpretation.
Yeah, hey, thanks for clearing that up. I was just pointing out, as it was going along, when I was reading the application, it was just a way for us to look at the project and take under consideration what was in front of us.
Understood.
Thank you. So I know, Steve, there was a couple of people that didn't get out there, right?
I did,
And
yes.
I think that's how we ended it up the last time or something like that. Refresh my memory, I might be wrong.
I did a drive-by as well at the location.
Yeah, I don't, yeah, it just was a different eye. I guess that's the best
Yes.
way for me to say it. It was just a different eye, different point of view of looking at the project in a whole. So that was the only issue that I had. I don't know if there was any other board members that have opinions on it or got to see it.
I did do a drive-by.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, I think if there's no other comments or questions, we can probably go to those 5 factors.
Well, you should
Or
open it up for the
yeah,
public, if
yes.
anybody from the public wants to be heard.
Yeah, is there anyone in the public sitting out there that's got any comments to bring to this? And I appreciate you giving us this stuff. That helps. Thank you. Do you have the factors?
I would also just note for the record that 2 of the houses right across the street are over 8,000 square feet. So when you go through the criteria, those who drove by the location, I'm sure, saw those houses.
They
So
were
you have a
before
little
us.
bit of an echo. There's a little bit of an echo in here, I think, today. Would you say that the house across the street is 8,000 square feet?
There's the house immediately across the street is 3,190. The one to the right of that's 8,000 and change. The one behind that's 8,000 and change. So there's some pretty large houses in that area that, this would certainly be in conformity with the character of that community. But parcel 66-1, something, I can't read it because my eyes are no good anymore, and then parcel 6 are both over 8,000 square feet houses.
So if any of the board members have any questions or they'd like to talk to the applicant about any of the 5 factors or make any comments, that's fine. You can ask for any responses. If you want to discuss them before you close the public hearing, you can do that. If you think you have all the information that you need and nobody from the public wants to be heard, then you can entertain a motion to close the public hearing. And then once the public hearing is closed, you could discuss the 5 factors on the record tonight, make a decision. You have 62 days to render a decision if the public hearing is closed. You've proceeded in, both fashions, either a decision and then a direction to prepare a resolution, or sometimes you've closed the hearing and waited to the next meeting to to discuss and decide.
So I have a clarifying question. Specifically, what is it that the applicant is requesting? Are they requesting an additional 6% of an increase, which is $23.99 total?
No,
What is the total square footage that's being requested?
It's the square footage for the lot size, not for the house, but for the lot size. So the existing lot is
And I apologize, I
41
know you said that.
it's 41,101
change.
square feet.
Right.
So it's it's about 2,000 square feet, less than an acre.
Thanks, guys.
Sure.
Yeah, do you, anyone want to discuss it, or do you feel confident on going to a vote here at the panel?
My concern is setting any kind of precedent of allowing this to happen. We've been pretty consistent of not allowing this to happen.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Who doesn't want to start a
I
precedent?
said we've been consistent of, I don't want to set any precedent for giving this kind of zoning appeal, where in the past we've been pretty consistent of not giving this type of zoning appeal.
So that's the purpose of the Zoning Board of
Yeah.
Appeals. And, I've been doing this 30 years, and this is about as small a variance
I understand.
as I've seen asked for. I don't know about precedent, but that's what the board is here to do, is to evaluate each case on its own merits.
Yes.
And I feel that, as I say, in 30 years, this is about as a slam dunk as I've seen. It's a very minor variance that we're seeking. And when you consider the 5 criteria, I just, hope you take that into consideration.
We will.
I have no doubt.
We've all been doing this a long time,
That's why I have
right?
no- That's why I have no hair either.
Yeah, we're all doing this a long time, and we do take every case step by step.
Step by step.
So it's just a process. We try to remain as consistent as we can and as fair as we can. So, well, if no one has any other comments, I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. So, Dave.
You got 62 days from today to render a decision. I'll give you your options, what you can do right now, right? So what you may wish to do one way or the other is you can discuss your feelings about the 5 factors. We can step through them to discuss out loud and kind of get a feel for where everybody stands on it. Doesn't mean you have to make a decision tonight. You don't have to take a vote tonight. You can. You have in the past, and then directed me to prepare a resolution consistent with that. It might be that you discuss the factors and then decide to kind of wait and consider it further and then come back next meeting. Or maybe even if the dates work out right, you could wait till the meeting after that as need be. But I would think that you'd have enough by next meeting. Based upon what I'm hearing, if you go that route, you don't vote tonight, but you discuss it, I could prepare a draft resolution that seems to be consistent with kind of what I'm hearing, and you could consider that at your next meeting and vote to, either pass or look for amendments to that resolution if you have a draft in front of you. All of those options are things that you've done in the past, and all are rational
Right.
and fine.
I think I would feel comfortable, and board just chime in here. I think I would feel comfortable, let's start the discussion here. If we can hit those 5 factors, Dave, and
Absolutely.
have a talk, and then let's see where that takes us.
Yeah, okay. So as the board's aware, it's a balancing test that you have to apply. It's the benefit to the applicant as weighed against any detriment to the health, safety, and welfare of the community. That balancing test is guided by the 5 factors. The first factor is whether an undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties will be created by the granting of the area variance. You want to take it one by one and talk about each one?
Yeah, let's do that. So, actually, no. Let's go down all
I'll give you,
of them
I'll give you all 3, all 5 rather.
All 5, yes,
Right,
thank
so
you.
that's the first one, is an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood or detriment to nearby properties. 2 is whether the benefit sought by the applicant can be achieved by some method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than an area variance. Number 3 is whether the area variance is substantial. 4 is whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district. And number 5 is whether the alleged difficulty was self-created, and in an area variance context, that's relevant but not itself determinative, unlike a use variance where if it's self-created, that's the end of the story.
Thanks, Dave. So when, last meeting, when I was talking about how I drove by looking at a different eye because I was thinking it was the same footprint and it was just going to kind of remain the same there, bigger off of that same footprint. And I know, Steve, when you went out there, you because you weren't out there, so you went out to that and you saw, yeah, and I know you discussed it just a little while ago. Did you have a different feeling to the project after we had that clarification of, or after we cleared up the mistake on the application?
I did. After we had the discussion as far as the structure being built on a not the original footprint, and then having gone out to the location and having an eye on it, I had some concerns overall with the project. And we can discuss this with the applicant's representation as far as, are there any concessions that the applicant is willing to discuss with that 6% variance request?
We can't change the size of the lot. The lot's the same whether or not it's 1 square foot bigger house or 2,000 square foot bigger house. We can't change the size of the lot. It's been like that since 1969, I think. So.
But as far as the structure that is requested to be built, you want to go from a 4-bedroom to a 6-bedroom, correct?
The problem with changing the structure is the structure, as you view it from the road, is only going to be 10 or 12 feet wider than it is now. It's going to be a story and a half, a split level, story and a half. So it's not going to look that much different from the road and from the neighborhood. Behind it's all woods, to the left and right are all woods. It really, there's no benefit to changing the structure itself. The square footage is well within the limits of the zone and the area. I mean, I'm not sure what kind of limit would you want on the structure. It's not going to be all that much different than it is now.
I don't want to give you a number to work with. I'm just talking about as far as what concession or what negotiation would the applicant be willing to go forth as far as to discuss this matter?
Well, again, the structure meets all the bulk requirements of the town, including coverage, which is, as far as I'm concerned, a function of the area. So, if you have 15% coverage, the amount of lot you have would be the amount of house you could build. So someone who meets the 43,560 could have a 8,000 square foot, 6,000 plus square foot house on that lot with no problem, just on a single level. We're missing 2,000 square feet from that 43,560, and we're doing a 5,000 square foot house and a two-story building. We're upgrading the septic and the well to make everything more environmentally, less impactful. So I don't know that changing the shape or size of the help would be all that beneficial. The neighbors who would be most affected and the community that would be most affected have no objection to neither the size or the style of the house, and they're directly across the street. So Well, you know, if the client was forced to change the house,
I know
we need a
it's-
number. I mean, we can't.
Right, I know it's a unique property layout. It's rather narrow as far as it appears
Well,
to be, and I didn't walk on the property. It appears to be a drop in the back.
But right, that's the limiting factor on this lot. It's a long, wide, narrow lot.
Right.
So the house has to go width-wise, and that's why it has such a, even the existing house has so much frontage or, you know, face towards the road. And unfortunately, even if we make the house smaller, you know, if you shorten it, you're just going to go back to the same image, but it's not that much bigger than what's there now. It's only 10, 12 feet longer.
The members of the board that haven't gone by the lot, would it be fair, would it be a fair statement if we kept this, we have 62 days, you said, Dave?
Yes.
62 days. If we kept this discussion going till next month, would that be ample time to go back and look at it with a different eye?
Would we be allowed to go on the property and not just do a drive-by? Of course. And how would that get set up? I'm not just going to show up and walk on somebody's
Isn't
property.
that part of the application?
They've signed a letter that you can go to the property. You have your ID if they question you.
And do I need any kind of advance notice to be given to do that?
If you could ask the applicant if they want advance notice of a member coming, then I can
Sure,
call and
I'll
do
ask.
that.
Yeah,
I don't
I-
believe it's an issue. I think, to be honest, it's, the property's very clear from the road.
Oh, yeah, no, I understand.
It's not like you have to hike
I'm
back
not gonna
5
go-
acres to see the
I'm
house.
not looking to go under somebody's deck and
again,
poke around.
the part that's obviously most important to you is the view shed. The house sits low on the lot.
Mike?
It's surrounded by woods.
That was the
Sorry.
mic.
It's surrounded by woods. The woods to the right are never going to be developed, in my humble opinion, because of environmental issues. So, you know, and there's a drainage way 50 feet behind the property. Again, not going to be developed. It's pretty much owned by the town of Monroe. So that leaves the piece on the left, which I suppose could cut down trees.
They pretty much owned by the town of Monroe? Pretty
Right,
much, or is it
there's
owned?
a drainage way, 50-foot drainage way in the rear of the property that is owned by the town of
Okay.
Monroe. You know, and there's a intermittent stream that runs down there. I think it might even be, anyway, it's a drainage ditch.
Yeah.
It picks up all.
I would suggest that if there's a consensus to have one or more members get back out to the site, that you reopen the public hearing. Nobody has entered the room or left the room, but in case we're going to put this over to the next meeting to continue a discussion, those board members are going to have observations, or they may have observations that they may want to put on the record that the applicant is deserving of the opportunity to address whatever they may be. And if the public hearing's closed, whatever those observations are won't be part of the hearing record, and the applicant won't have the opportunity to respond. So I would suggest, if you're going to do that, you reopen it with a view towards closing it again next meeting, and hopefully coming to a decision, if you can, next meeting.
Thanks, Dave. I would like to make a motion to reopen the public hearing.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Sorry, I didn't catch you saying that.
Steve. All right, so let's go forward with that plan. And
So I would suggest, under the circumstances, that you then take a separate motion also to continue the public hearing and state the date of the next meeting. That way it's perfectly clear when we're coming back.
when is the next meeting, Noreen?
What's the point of keeping the public hearing open if nobody's been to any of the meetings? Anything they say after their site visit would be part of the record regardless.
I think if the hearing's closed, it won't be part of the record. And the argument would be if they do say something out loud and then they want to rely on it as a basis for a decision, either for or against, the argument that you'd have and other members of the public would have would say, well, there was a comment, they relied on something, and they relied on something that's outside the record. So I think, as a matter of fairness to you, in case there's something there that you think is wrong you'd like to address, you'd certainly want your ability to address that on the record.
I disagree and I object to reopening the public hearing, but I know the board's made their decision. Just want my objection noted for the record then.
It's noted. It's noted. Thank you.
Next meeting on May 23rd.
No,
No?
we are May 30th.
Oh, okay.
We got pushed to the,
If the board wants to meet me out there, I'd be happy to accompany anybody. I work for MJS.
I don't know
Have
if
I
we
done-
can do that without actually making that a meeting.
yes,
You
you can.
can,
It's not a quorum.
as long as there's less than three.
Yeah, if there's no quorum, you can do it anytime. If there's a quorum, you have to announce a date and
Okay.
time and publish it.
All right, so I'd like to make a motion to reopen this public hearing on.
That motion was, not to
set-
reopen, to continue the public hearing
Continue
on.
the public hearing, the ZBA meeting, May 30th.
I'll second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Now
I
leave
just
it
leave
there.
it- leave it there.
Yeah, just leave it on the table. Thank you. Have a good night.
All right, moving on to the next is Reynoso, 701 Lakes Road. How you doing?
Hi, Jesse Shee, project engineer.
Okay. You'd like to give us a little recap?
Sure. Yeah, so the owner is looking to construct an addition to her house that would add around 600 square feet of building area to that property. However, the property currently has a lot width of 138.9 feet, which is below the required minimum of 150, and it exceeds, it has a lot coverage of 20.5% over the maximum allowed of 15%. Both of these are pre-existing nonconformities.
You know what, can I just interrupt you for a second? I just realized this is the first, it's first on for a public hearing right now, right?
Correct.
First?
So we should, entertain a motion to
Yeah.
open the public hearing, and anything that the applicant's representative said should be deemed part of the
Okay.
record, nunc pro tunc, we'll say, now as if then.
Thanks, Dave. I'd like to make a motion to open the public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Sorry about that,
No.
continue, we just didn't pick it up.
Does he have to repeat all that, or we're good?
No, you know what, since you didn't include it in your motion, you should take a separate motion to say everything that the applicant just said shall be deemed part of the public hearing record, right? Is there a motion for that?
I make a motion to state that everything that the applicant has said is part of the public hearing.
Second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, continue on.
Thanks, Dave.
Okay, with the, regarding the impervious coverage, in order to not increase coverage any further, we're proposing to remove around 600 square feet of asphalt to keep the coverage at 20.5%. But other than that, that's really about it with this project. I think it's pretty straightforward. The variances are pretty minor, and I hope the board can come to a decision tonight.
Thank you. So the last week, or last month when we were here, I could have sworn it was a public hearing, but I guess it wasn't. They brought, did you see the plans? Or did it come before? They came with plans, and I think the members that were here, this was the strange calculation that came out to be almost the same in the coverage from the old to the new, which is just freaky.
Yeah, my question was, so what is the variance that's being sought if you're taking away asphalt to cover the?
Right.
The
lot coverage.
one is the lot width. It's 150 is what it should be, and they're at 138.8 now, I believe.
Yeah, correct.
And then the coverage is, I have 20.5 4%, but you said 20.5, that might have been a difference?
Yeah, so right now, as the property is right now, it's 20.5. And afterwards, we're also proposing 20.5 by removing part of the driveway.
Okay. So all variances being sought now are pre-existing non-conforming, not being changed?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
Kind of yes and no, right? There's changes proposed to the house where they're putting additions on, but they're removing other lot coverage, so that the house will look a little different, but ultimately with the addition over existing impervious coverage and the removal of some of the driveway, the coverage is the only issue, and that remains the same. They have actually decreased the coverage by 10 square feet.
So although it's not pre-existing non-conforming, that's his concession, that's he's removing the 600 square feet of asphalt to compensate.
Right.
Okay.
So as to not effectuate an increase in any of the existing conditions at all.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And it was, I think it was Dave, right? Was here the last month presenting this, right? So they came back with those concessions and those changes and removing that concrete to work with us there.
Asphalt.
The asphalt, yes, to work with us. So, yeah, so it's pre-consistent there, so it's, and any other questions from the board?
No issues with the county from the town of Chester?
No, I didn't hear back. I got the other one came back. Leibowitz,
Yeah,
Renoso.
Leibovitz came back
No, I
as,
see he's got the town of Chester within 500 feet.
Renoso says I didn't get back today. I'm surprised. I will have to check on it tomorrow. So this will have to stay open.
Right.
well, it depends on whether, if the referral was made more than 30 days ago, the referral was made within 30 days, then it has to remain open.
Yeah, it has to remain.
Okay.
So, is there anyone in the public out there that'd like to make any comments or have anything to say about this project? Come, step forward there, please.
State your name and your
State-
address,
yeah.
please.
Alan Muller, 672 Lakes Road. What these people are asking for, because I read the letter, didn't say anything, they're just asking to put an addition on the existing house?
Yes.
Okay.
And taking away existing lot coverage. So the lot coverage will stay the same.
Okay.
So essentially putting something here but taking something away here. So the impermeable stays the same
Okay.
for drainage.
Yeah, so the lot coverage is calculated by, it could be your area, your driveway, your patio, walkway, and that's how that's calculated. So they're removing some of that as they're putting their addition on to keep the coverage relatively the same, if not a little lower.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely.
Thanks. So if there's no other comments,
Well, I have a comment. Can we go through the 5 steps even though this is still going to be opened? Or could we not do that?
Sure, you certainly can. You know, I wouldn't make any decisions, right? You can't make any decisions, but you can talk, if you want to talk about out loud on the record to give the applicant some feedback or to see how you all feel about it. Now, there's
They
nothing
have to go
stopping.
through, we have to go through them again next time?
yes.
Okay, then
Yes, we have to
it's
go through them
not-
next time.
It's not really the point.
Right. All right, if there's nothing further, I'd like to make a motion to keep this public hearing open for the May 30th ZBA meeting.
Second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
New faces.
Next up, Homeland Towers. How you doing, guys?
How you guys doing?
Good, good.
Good evening. For the record, my name is David Kenny, an attorney with Snyder & Snyder, here tonight to represent Homeland Towers and Verizon Wireless.
And is this on too or no? And Vincent Xavier, Regional Manager for Homeland Towers.
Just a little back, I believe
Hold
this
on.
is our,
You need to open the public hearing, please.
Make a motion to open a public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Sure. So just as a little backstory, this is our first public hearing. We've been before this board now since last summer. We went through the application. The board hired a wireless consultant, Cityscape, and way back when, it's been some time now, back in July 12, 2022, they issued a memo that did state we do have a need for this facility. It is the minimum height necessary, and that there's no other alternatives that would eliminate the need for this facility. At that time, we were referred to the planning board so that they could continue their review as far as the site plan, and they designated themselves lead agency. We had public hearings before the planning board, and we also had a couple balloon tests. We did have some site visits with members of this board as well. And all in all, we seem to have addressed all of the public comments that were made during the course of our public hearing before the planning board. The planning board then, at its most recent meeting on April 18th, issued a neg deck for our project and referred us back to this board so you could take action on the use variance that's before this board. Again, the backstory here is that the town has specific restrictive zones for where wireless towers can be located in the utility tower overlay districts. Unfortunately, the need for this facility is far away from any of these utility tower overlay districts, so we couldn't locate our facility in one of those approved uses. In speaking with the building inspector, the only variance that we require is just a use variance. Building height doesn't apply to us because we don't meet the definition of building, and there's also an exception for towers. But us being located where we are, we through the balloon tests and all the visual analysis reports, we've shown that we've presented an application that's minimally visible to the surrounding public and still will fill this significant gap in service in Verizon's network, and also provide additional co-location space should any of the other carriers in the area also have a need on this tower. We can discuss, if you want to go through, we did submit a memo in support of the variance or the use variance. There's a little bit of a different standard for a public utility wireless facility than the normal 5-point balancing test. It essentially is a different test by case law. It's called the Dakar versus the Zoning Board of Appeals. It's a 2017 decision. It goes back to 1980 case law from Rosenberg.
Before you get into that, right? So after last month, you were going back to the planning board, and they were going to
Monopine.
Yeah, right. They were going to decide or talk about the poll. Did that happen?
Absolutely. So as part of their reasoning for issuing the negative declaration, they decided a monopine design.
Monopine?
Correct. They felt that the monopine design added a little additional stealthing, and for them to provide a negative declaration, that helped to mitigate any of the concerns about the visibility of the tower. So the monopine design was chosen by the planning board. The final design of the monopine, as far as the branch length and layout, is still going to be finalized with the planning board at a final site plan approval, but they did choose the monopine design as part of their neg deck.
That's a tough call. No, because after everything that you showed us last month, you know, I was oscillating. I was going back and forth, you know, because the pole really does, from far away, blend right into the sky. What do I know? Yeah. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
And so
they struggled with it as well as most people do, because it is very subjective. It depends on which viewpoint you're actually, considering it from. So it is difficult. Yes.
Yeah. And you're listening, and you have one thing in your head, then when you see all the options, it's like, oh, it's not that cut and dry.
Yeah, it's hard.
And then, just as I was stating before, it's just a little bit of a different test before this board than the 5-point balancing test. For a public utility, when we're seeking a variance such as this, we need only to show that there's gaps in service, that the location of the proposed facility will remedy those gaps in service, and that the facility presents a minimal intrusion on the surrounding community. So it's a little bit of a different one, because obviously things like whether or not the need for the variance is self-created, that's really a technological requirement. You know, we're related to the surrounding facilities, and it's just a little bit of a standard as well, because there is federal law that prohibits a town from prohibiting us from filling this gap in service. So the 5-point balancing test has then, through case law, been restricted to almost that 3-point test that I just outlaid.
And that's accurate.
But again, we're happy to hear from any questions or comments from this board, as well as any members of the public.
And just to recap, since it's been so long since you got the Cityscape report, the board had engaged Cityscape last summer to help it analyze the first two factors, and a little bit of the third factor. But the first two factors: is there a gap in service that could be capacity, or the service itself, coverage? And to my memory, Cityscape looked at that issue, looked at the proof that the applicant presented, and confirmed that there was, in fact, a gap, I think, on both levels. And it obviously confirmed that what they're proposing is going to satisfy those. I think that's usually a foregone conclusion, because the applicant wouldn't be here if it wasn't filling the need that they were identifying. But Cityscape confirmed that as well. And then the last factor is the one that I think is really kind of open now for you, and there's sort of concurrent jurisdiction over some of the issues, and that is it a minimal intrusion, or is it the least intrusive means to solve the issue that they have? And that is partially a location issue, and I think that's the part of it that Cityscape addressed, to say, there's not really any other locations. The applicant, they gave the opinion that the applicant presented proof with their search rings, and it looked at it on a number of different levels, including, are there any spots within the existing utility overlay zones? And the answer was, clearly not. That would solve this problem. Then, is there any other existing co-location possibilities that would solve this problem? And the answer was no. And then, were there any other, raw land locations within the search ring area that would solve this problem? And I think Cityscape confirmed that the applicant established that the answer was no. So the issue that's remaining for you is in terms of the minimum intrusion on the zoning scheme and on the community really comes down. The only issue I think really that I can identify at this point is the visual impact, and that's the one spot where you sort of overlap with the planning board, and that's why the applicant has been going to the planning board with the balloon tests and the visual impact analysis and so forth. And I think that's the issue. Is there, is there another alternative to what's been presented before you that presents a less intrusive, that is less intrusive to the community? Or, and that's one way of looking at it. Is it the least intrusive means, or some other case law that talks about, is it minimally intrusive? Related, similar stated standards, but a little bit different. But either way, I think the issue remains the same before you.
Well, to that point, it brings me back to a comment I think John Seeley had last month on, and correct me if I'm wrong, it was other carriers can jump onto the tower, and then what would that look like, right? It was something along that lines. If they could jump onto that tower, then what would that pole look like, right?
For some kind of rendering.
Right? You remember that?
Yep. So we had provided a rendering that showed a full build out on the tower. I have a copy with it, actually. It's in the most recent photo simulation report. So it didn't show the extension as if someone extended the tower. Right. But what's happened here by the fact of the planning board doing the monopine, that's actually complicated for any future carrier, the extension of this monopine. They arguably could still do so under an eligible facilities request if it meets the height requirements, which is less than 20 feet. But they would also now be required to be continuing that existing stealth design. So they would have to do the same exact branch pattern. They'd have to make sure it has the same exact taper design. So it actually adds a little bit extra security for that, I guess, speculative application for a co-location. This was also discussed before the planning board as well. What would it be if they extended the height of the tower? That's really speculative because the applicant that's before you is Verizon, and Verizon has no need to do that. We've shown the minimum height. We don't have any knowledge if there would be a forthcoming application that would extend the height of the tower. And in fact, we've designed the tower so that it has co-location spaces below Verizon. And the idea is that, so Verizon's coming here to fill its entire service needs, and they're doing so with expending some capital to make an investment in the new tower to fill that. A new co-location carrier, they don't have the same capital investment. So even if they go below Verizon and maybe they get 90% of their coverage gap, that's still going to be a win for them because they don't now have to spend that capital to try to build a new tower somewhere else, or if they're trying to extend a monopine, the capital that would cost to extend the height of the monopine. So we did have rendering show full build out on our 100 or 105 foot tower, but we don't
But it didn't show the extension.
Correct, because
Right, and I think that's what the point was. And so with the extension, there's a limit.
Correct.
Is it 20 feet?
20 feet is the limit, and that would be under what is known as an eligible facilities request.
Right. And I think the other point you made, and I'm sure it's engineered for that.
So with a monopine, it's less engineered for that. So they're putting in certain ports and holes into this tower for the branch layout. And then they're also going to put on top of the tower like a topper, so to speak, so that it'll have a tapered design. So someone will then have to take off that topper and then add in like maybe something that'll fit within, or they'll have to do an extension that's bolted around. I mean, it's engineering. It can be done.
And the foundation, the base of the foundation would be able to handle that extension.
Absolutely, because we over-engineer that, not for the purposes of extension, but for purposes of getting the most weight on the tower as we can.
Okay.
And that would be the branches add weight to the tower, the carrier additional equipment below Verizon would add weight to the tower. So we make sure we over-engineer for those purposes.
Yeah, I'm sure now you're going to go with the monopine, with those branches and the extra weight that could carry versus a pole with weather, snow, sway, all that kind of stuff.
And that's another factor for extensions. You know, while you come in and there may be an engineering solution for that, it's adding cost if you have to structurally reinforce something to get that additional 20 feet. So more often than not, when I see a co-location application in an existing tower, it's maybe 1 out of 20 that I've seen them try to even extend the height by 10 feet or 20 feet. Okay. Usually if they can go below, they're going to go below, save that money, and get whatever coverage they can get.
Okay. Thank you. Any other comments from the board?
I don't think we had a rendering of.
We did have that last, it was...
Voted.
Yeah. If I recall correctly, what your specific ask was actually for the monopole design on leaf off to show a monopole fully loaded, and we jumped right on that, and that's part of the most recent submission. But as part of the most recent submission, we showed both a monopine and a monopole fully loaded. With the monopine, with visual renderings, it's kind of hard to see because it's just you're making it more of a mass there. But if you look specifically on the monopole, where it's more obvious, we made sure to include in that submission the 4 carriers that would be on there. So we did try to answer your request as much as possible. More of a mass, I'm sorry. I meant mass.
Mike isn't light.
Bigger object to look at, right?
No, more filled in. So again, so if you go into, and I have it on an electric copy in my car if we really need to, but the March 30th, 2023 Saratoga Associates report, that's the most recent visual analysis report. At the very end of the report, we have those photo sims that have the monopole, monopine, leaf on, leaf off. We have in there specifically from the Round Lake, the 100-foot monopine tower filled in with 4 carriers. So we do have it. It's basically, if you were going to compare the one that had 1 carrier to the one that has 4 carriers, below the Verizon kind of rad center, we'll call it, in between the branches, you may see some more sky. Then obviously, if we're putting more antennas in between those branches, you'll see more green or, the color of the tree. So that's what he meant by more mass. It's just you're kind of filling in the cracks that would be the spaces between the branches by adding those carriers. The carriers would be closely mounted to the pole itself, and the branches would extend out further than them, so it wouldn't add anything to a greater profile. It would just kind of fill in the gaps that's within that profile.
As carriers is a Charlie Brown tree.
We wouldn't say Charlie Brown. It's just, and again, the actual final branch layout and design, something we're going to be going through with the planning board and make sure that they approve.
Said it's the March 23rd.
Yeah.
It's dated March 30th. Yep.
So going forward, I'll find a better word to use than mess, because if I got in the record saying that it was going to be a mess, that wouldn't be
Yeah,
good
it
for
sounded
me.
like a mess. Yeah.
Sorry, I apologize. But no, it wouldn't be a Charlie Brown, because even if there's just one carrier on there, know that the monopine would have the full 40 feet of branches installed from the get-go. It's not like you install the branches as the carriers come in. It would have the whole 40, and then as the next carrier comes in, you remove the branches that are necessary to then put the next carrier on there. But regardless, all of the carrier equipment would be within the radius or diameter of the existing branches, so you're not making it a wider profile or anything like that. So.
All right, if there's no other questions, is there anyone in the public that would have any comments or questions on this project?
Like me to give you some options?
Options are great, Dave.
So, if there's anything that any of the board members still want to hear or see from the applicant, now would be the time to ask them, and they could either address it right now, or you could ask them to bring it for the next meeting. Is there any? That's the first question. Does everybody have what they need right now? And so, if so, then it would seem appropriate to close the public hearing. Now, there's really only a couple issues to then really be discussed, but I would suggest that you not take any kind of votes tonight, because for the sole reason that one of the provisions of the federal law is that we need to make sure that all of your decisions on these cell tower applications are in written form and they cover certain topics. And so what I'd like to do is, get a feel from you on, how you're feeling, and then I could draft in accordance with that in advance of the next meeting. And then at the next meeting, you can look at what I've drafted or in advance, and then we could talk about what changes and if any, and then you could vote ideally at the next meeting on it. Like I said before, I've kind of outlined the issues for you before. Really, the only remaining issue that I think is this the least intrusive means, or is it minimally intrusive in terms of the visual? I think we've, been beating that horse to death, and that's the main thing to discuss. And then the secondary thing to discuss would be if we're headed toward a grant of the use variance, to talk about what conditions you might wish to, impose on that. And certainly one would be, or a series would be, subject to the, to the continued review and approval and, reasonable continued review by the planning board and whatever conditions they would place. But one of the things I did is I brought with me one of the lists of conditions that from about 2-3 years ago on a cell tower, a little bit substantially different circumstances than this one. So a lot of them don't remotely apply, but some of them might. And we can talk about some of them now. We could, you can let me know if you have any that are of concern for you. You could let me, come up with some that I think are applicable and put it in the draft for consideration next time. We could do any and all of those things.
I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing.
I'd second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. So so let's discuss. So you're right, with the difference, how this is judged, right? The one that we really matters to us is the visual, or could it be done, and we've beaten that to death. I guess the question I have is, if we don't agree, and this is just my opinion, with the monopine, is that set in stone?
You know, it's a great question, and that's the one that is, it's a tough one. It's the applicant's worst nightmare to have the two boards disagree in that regard.
I live for that stuff.
And then it becomes a question of what is exactly the standard? There's some law that talks about this board's decision. Some case law talks about it being a decision as to whether what is being proposed is the least intrusive means. Is it the least intrusive visual impact? There's other case law that talks about is it just minimally intrusive either way? And we could ask Mr. Kennedy to talk about that dichotomy or what he sees on this issue.
Sure. Yeah, but before you waste your time, that's just my opinion. I don't know what the rest of the board, and it might have been just the last one I saw, right? That's how fickle it was. But this is just my opinion, from the one shot that has everyone talking is the shot from Round Lake, right? And it just seemed like the monopine really stuck out there versus the monopole where it just kind of blended into the sky. But that's just my opinion. If the rest of the board doesn't matter, then it just doesn't matter.
To me, they were pretty equally obtrusive, less obtrusive. It was kind of like I could see both sides of it. Yeah. So that's not particularly that important to me.
I agree.
Specifically, which one would I go for? I don't think in this particular situation is that applicable. I see the benefits of both of them.
Anyone else? What?
I don't have an eye for it.
Yeah. All right, so then it's a moot point.
It is 6 of 1.
Yeah, then it's a moot point.
Few.
So if there's no,
It was very important to the planning board.
going
They
for the-
they were very,
really?
yeah, they felt for being in the RPO that this was something they needed to allow us to be approved in that zone.
What about the red oak version?
We'll give you the one in California that's 2,000 feet tall.
There was another municipality where they were seriously discussing making it a giant clock tower.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
On top of a ridge line, it's usually where you find clock towers.
Probably not appropriate in this particular application.
No.
One day we'll be able to make them invisible, but until that day, trees are the best we can do.
So, I could come, if the board is good with the visual impact of the monopine, that can be, a condition, or that you're deferring to the planning board in regard to its continued design of the, the location or the design of the actual pine.
Design of the facility.
The facility itself. Yeah. So I think that pretty much reduces the issues to the conditions, I think, if everybody's in agreement with that. Does that seem accurate?
Yes.
So I don't know how you want to handle that. I could give you a quick, summary of each of the conditions from that old one, that many of which are not applicable at all. I could do that now. I could come up with what I think are, applicable here on my own. I think it probably would make sense while we're here to talk about some of them to see if they're,
I'd say so.
Yeah. So, and these are the conditions that were in the, it was the Verizon Wireless Tower over on Bar Lane. That's the one I just happened to print out and bring up here with me. The first condition would be it's subject to review and site, approval by the planning board. That's, I think, what I would highly recommend. That's a no-brainer there. The second one is not applicable. That's co-locating on the water tower. That's not applicable at all here. Again, number 3, also related to that water tank, not applicable here. Number 4 was The electronic ground equipment shall be located as advised by the planning board. And then we had, in no event shall be located outside the fenced-in area of the water tank. That's not applicable. The ground equipment shall be surrounded in all visible directions by shrubbery, landscaping, or other approved concealed methods, and shall be properly maintained in a manner, and at such times it should be determined by the planning board. That seems like it's,
Right.
like, they're going to be designing the ground equipment, right? All the,
Yeah, what-
any landscaping or screening is going to be,
Because of our setbacks, it's like the existing vegetation will be the screening, but they've asked us to put vinyl coating on the fence. That's, yeah, black vinyl coating, so that's one of the things we'll do. But of course, everything will be located within the existing compound. But I think whether these are conditions of this approval or not, those are going to be worked out as part of the final site plan anyway.
If we could just clarify that, I don't know if this goes to what you were thinking, but generally the meter bank and the electrical transformer is just outside the fence. So when you're saying all equipment, all of the carrier's base equipment will be in the compound, but the meter bank for each electrical account and the transformer, the little green box, is generally just outside the compound.
right, so I think what this condition is getting at is all of that, all location and design and screening, if any, is to be handled by the planning board, right?
Right.
Is that you guys good with that?
Yes.
Okay. The next one is applicant shall at all times maintain the facility in a like new and safe working condition. The maintenance of same is to be contracted out to any person or entity other than the applicant. The applicant shall provide the name of the maintenance company, a memorandum of the contract, the addresses, email addresses, and phone numbers of all maintenance companies. I think that was one that was very important in that community where they needed an easement and they were coming into that very dense residential community to deal with that.
Right.
Does anybody feel strongly that something like that should be in your conditions on this application, or?
I don't think so.
I agree with Chip.
I think it really is tailored more towards that other situation, which is pretty unique. This was also, shall regularly paint the structures and equipment in such a way and such intervals as shall be defined in the site plan and approved by the Town of Monroe Planning Board. Again, the painting was important in that circumstance because it was to be painted to maintain the same exact color as the water tank. So painting, I don't know if that, you
could say maintain.
Maintain, that's what I was going to say,
maintain the monopine design.
Maintain, shall regularly maintain in such a way and such intervals, right? Applicant shall provide a plan for the removal of the proposed antenna and accessory structures and for restoration of the site. Should the service be discontinued, such removal and restoration shall be accomplished promptly after such discontinuance. I think, that would seem to apply. I would assume you would have
provide a removal and restoration plan.
no problem. Any vehicles shall not park on Bar Lane, that's out. Damage to or deposit of debris or sediment on Bar Lane, okay, that's not applicable. Verizon shall take the necessary precautions to avoid damaging or depositing sediment, that's again Bar Lane, this is Bar Lane, Bar Lane, Bar Lane, protecting the roadway and everything, not applicable. Same thing, the next one is ground-based equipment. It should be matching the style of the Meadowglen townhouse structures. That's not applicable. Ground surface disturbance of the project caused by construction or ongoing maintenance shall be repaired to original site conditions, including finished lawn services, gravel, paved driveways. I think that's all planning board issues. I don't think that belongs in here. It was important for that one, but not this one. This is the homeowners association. That's not applicable. That's like unique to that condition. Site visits and construction operations during regular business hours. That's again, I think, that was all unique to that one. And then the rest are, the two are standard. Shall pay all due fees before the permits, COs, shall comply with all other laws and rules. Those are all pretty standard.
Yeah, it's pretty cut and dry.
Anybody have any others that they would like inserted that they can think of? Okay. So I think I can draft between now and the next meeting. I can work with Mr. Kenny to, make sure that we have the proper citations as necessary, and then I think you should be ready for the next meeting for a decision, I would think.
Okay. Any other comments there?
Check if we have
Disturbance, construction, but
Did you mention something
Closer
about
to your mic, John.
maintenance over the life of the tower?
Yeah,
Including the-
lightning,
including the-
like from, or lighting.
lightning.
You know, the tower itself is basically a lightning rod.
Yeah.
That's why you get around it. That's why you get around it.
But generally, and as part of the construction drawings during the building permit phase, if you want to add a condition to say that during the building permit phase, to ensure that all ground equipment is properly grounded to the fence, that is standard practice for us, so we wouldn't object to an additional
I would imagine it would be
requirement or
grounded
condition.
to the fence, or grounded to something.
Yeah, everything's pretty grounded, yeah.
Yeah, it's,
Want to send me that, you can email me that language?
Sure, absolutely.
And I'll
It's-
make it one of the conditions.
Yeah, properly grounded and bonded, but yeah, we can do that.
Good, okay.
All right, if there's no other comments or questions, I guess make a motion to leave this open. No,
I
it's
don't think
closed.
you-
It's
I don't think you need a
closed,
motion.
right?
You've
It's
closed the public
right?
hearing.
Closed it already.
You have 62
Yeah.
days to make a decision, and we've got a
Okay.
plan. It's on me to come back at the next meeting, and you'll be ready.
Great.
And just a point of order, we already extended the federal shot clock to June 20th, I believe, so you have the additional time under that shot clock as well.
Great, thanks.
The May 30th.
Next, May 30th.
30th.
May 30th.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks.
you.
Have a good night.
Close the public hearing then?
We did already.
Okay.
Yes, we closed the public hearing.
Yeah, we closed it, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, great, thank you.
Okay.
Davey said I...
Okay, next up is 1218 East Monbeja Road. Yeah. How do you say your name?
Just use the microphone.
Safizadeh.
Oh, okay, thank you. So, what can we do for you?
All right, good evening. My name is Wafa, the first name, the last name Safizadeh. I live I came 20 years ago to Monroe, right away from my country to Monroe. So Monroe was my first home. And here where I get married, my kids will get born, and this is my home. So because of that, I decided to build a house. So I'm building on 12 East Monbeja Road, and we have a problem is the side yard, the foundation is protrude out like almost less than 3 inches
Right.
on the left side. So what I'm asking today, I'm asking for a variance of at least 3 to 4 inches on the left side.
So, yeah, it's the side yard variance, and, according to the application, you miss it by 0.3 or 0.4
Yes,
on the left
correct.
side.
Is it 0.3, 0.4, or 3 or 4?
It's actually 0.3.
0.3.
Yes.
Great.
0.3, right.
Yes.
That's all right, 0.3. So as I was reading the application and going over all the maps and everything that came in on this, the one thing, it was the reason it said because the way the house was dropped.
Okay, it dropped. It means when
settled?
no, not settled. Is when they come and design the plan, and then they drop the house on the plan within the setback.
So was it a
Was it a module home?
prefab house?
But no, it's
Stick built?
On foundation. Yes.
It could be a concrete foundation, but it could also be a module home.
No, it's not.
Okay.
No, it's a
Was the
stick-
house
stick built.
brought in and dropped there, or physically built there?
No, it's physically built there. It's So maybe it's misuse of the language, so.
Yeah, so
English is my second language, so
Yeah.
take that in mind.
Yeah, so it reads, it's mainly error of measurement plus minus 0.3 inches. It was not intended to happen. Perhaps it was done during the dropping of the house on the building box setback by Mason. So the house is how old?
The house is, there were a cabin on the lot. We knocked it over and we started from scratch. So the house is being built.
The house is being built now.
Yes, correct.
So you knocked the cabin down.
Yes.
Did the cabin have a foundation?
It did.
Did you remove that foundation, or you used in part of it?
No, we did remove it.
You removed it?
Yes.
So then you had the builder, the surveyor, whoever was come in and set your foundation corners.
Correct.
And so those were set incorrectly?
I believe, yes.
Or the mason just blew it?
I guess, I believe the surveyor, he did the thing, he did it on paper. And then the mason, you know, when they come, they put their stakes and they mark and that. So I guess they were not really giving attention. And at that time, I wasn't available on the site because I actually was in the hospital for cancer treatment. So, the project is got like dragging too long because I'm not there.
So who discovered that it was out?
But you know, after it's always with the procedure when you build a house. After you put the foundation, the building department, the inspector, he asked for more survey again for another survey. So we did the survey again, and the surveyor found that. And I have the drawing. You have it there. So this is how we found out. Otherwise, we never knew.
So during an inspection, they shot the foundation again, located the foundation again, and saw that it was out 3/10.
Yes.
Missed it by that much.
This much, and honestly, I want to tell you something. The lot is very narrow, and I feel like this plan was chosen for very I took a whole 1 year changing. This is maybe was the fourth plan that I got from scratch just to fit into the lot. So I was not asking for variance. I wouldn't sit today here.
The strange thing about this, the strange thing about this is usually once the foundation's set and the building's going, you wouldn't see this until they did an as-built. Right? And that means when the project's done, they're going to come out and locate it again.
Yes.
But to find it as the building is going on, it's just a little odd. But that means nothing. Huh.
So honestly, I'm hoping this has been taking too long, and I was hoping, to finish my house at least by the end of the summer, so I can go and relax and enjoy it. And so I'm hoping maybe you have everything on the front of you. Maybe you can make a decision tonight.
We can't make a decision.
Yeah,
tonight.
we can't make a decision tonight, but it's there's a process. How far along is the house? Is all the framing on top of
all the framing, everything is like the house. If you drive by the road, you think it's finished.
Next to the lion heads?
It's exactly on the intersection of water plant.
Yeah, I know exactly where the
So
house is.
it's like you look at it from the outside, you think it's finished inside. But it's inside, it's all bones. Nothing is being done right now. So we are in a long halt.
Yeah, this is,
This variance is
This
over
is-
3 inches.
excuse me?
This variance is over 3 inches.
3/10.
0.3.
3/10
Three
of
ten-
it.
0.3,
3/10. If a surveyor's measuring, it's 3/10.
Yes.
3.6.
Yeah.
3/10 of a foot,
So
so
4 inches.
0.6.
4
So-
inches.
Yeah,
3 or 4
it's,
inches.
yeah, I'd like to know who made the mistake, the surveyor or the mason.
I don't think that to be honest with you, I am thinking, but I don't know nothing. I'm not a surveyor. I'm not an architect. I'm just an amateur, and I just learned to build by myself. So.
Yeah, no.
Okay, so but I'm thinking is, you know, those guys, they come out on the land. They are curious. They just want to done with the job and leave. So I guess I'm not gonna say I'm certain, but I believe there is some mistake by the surveyor. Maybe is like they missed it by.
I'm gonna just disagree, because usually when a surveyor will go out there and he's marking the foundation, usually they're given 10-foot offsets to either direction of the corner.
Okay.
And then those are used, then the mason would pull
Okay.
off of that to mark his
Okay.
corners
All
and
right.
put that in. So it really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's no, but it's weird.
It is.
It's very weird. So we have the map, we have the story. If there's no other questions from the board,
That's it. It's this 4 inches.
yep.
That's it. That's it.
I have no
No
questions.
other-
I know.
no
I think
other
we're ready
questions.
for a public hearing.
Yeah, exactly. I make a motion to public hearing for May 30th.
We'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. So we'll come back next month.
Okay.
And the public hearing will happen, and we'll do all this again. And
Okay.
yes,
Want answers.
yeah,
That's the process, unfortunately.
That's okay. I understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's no way around that.
No, I
That has to
understand.
happen.
Thank you. I do appreciate it. Appreciate your time.
Yep.
Thank you.
no, thank you.
Thank you.
So we'll see you next month.
See you next month.
All righty,
Thank
bye.
You.
Thank you very
Bye-bye.
much.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Call me in the office on Monday, and then I'll tell you everything that you have to do for the public hearing.
We have the March minutes. No?
I never sent them to you.
All righty.
We don't have them.
You make me feel a lot better there.
Oh, I realized today, I was like, well, I'm not gonna send
Yep.
them to him at 4 o'clock.
4-inch variance.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. It's crazy that they found it.
Yeah. It's probably the smallest variance we've ever had come before us.
Why'd they say anything?
What'd they say?
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well,
Whiskey Tango Foxtrot.
yeah. All right, make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. Not bad for having that many things on the agenda.
No.